All right, so get ready because we are about to deep dive into a world where fave and crime and public opinion, they all kind of collide.
Ooh, interesting.
Could be good. So you guys gave us this list from the top10s.com, and it is called Top 10 Celebrities Who Should Be in Jail.
Okay.
And let me tell you, some of these names might raise some eyebrows.
I'm intrigued, yeah.
So we've got singers, politicians, business moguls, even YouTubers.
Wow, a real mix.
Oh, yeah, and the comment section, let me tell you, it is a wild mix of opinions.
I bet.
So we're going to unpack this list and see what we can learn about, how celebrity and accusations and public judgment all intersect.
Okay, sounds good.
First up is Chris Brown,
Okay.
and his history, unfortunately, speaks for itself.
Yeah, I mean, 2009, right? The assault on Rihanna. That was that was huge. That was a watershed moment. It wasn't just like a celebrity scandal. It really kind of forced a national conversation about domestic violence,
Right.
especially within the music industry.
Exactly. And looking at the comments, some people have not forgotten about that. They're calling him, a woman beater, saying he should still be behind bars.
Wow.
It's been years, but that incident clearly still resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure.
But then we jump from a case involving physical violence, right, to Donald Trump,
Okay.
and his alleged crimes are more of a, political nature.
Yeah, so this is where I think the list gets really interesting, right? Because now we're seeing kind of a blurring of the lines between legal transgressions and what people might call moral failings.
Right?
You know, the comments about Trump, like they're all over the map, which really reflects like just how divided public opinion is.
Yeah.
Some accuse him of, abusing his power or violating the Constitution, even calling him a dictator. But I mean, he's never been formally charged with any of these things.
Right. So is this where, the idea of cancel culture comes in?
Mhm.
Like, can public opinion alone be enough to demand legal consequences, even without those formal charges?
That's a huge question, and one that, we keep seeing play out again and again with these high-profile figures.
Right.
It raises all sorts of issues, like about due process, free speech, and the power of social media to shape narratives.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely makes you think about how much power public opinion actually has.
Mm-hmm.
But moving on from the world of politics, we have R. Kelly,
Okay.
and his case, unfortunately, is far less ambiguous.
Right, because unlike Trump, his crimes actually resulted in, like, actual convictions, right?
Right.
Racketeering, sex trafficking charges
Mm-hmm.
led to a significant prison sentence. And you see that in the comments, it reflects a very different sentiment, right? There's a sense of vindication for his victims and like a demand for justice against a really powerful figure who abused his position for, I mean, decades.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how the tone of the comments changes so drastically depending on the nature of the accusations
Right.
and whether there's been a legal resolution or not.
For sure.
And we see that again with Roman Polanski, another figure whose crimes are, a matter of public record.
Yeah, but Polanski's case is particularly complex, though, right? I mean, he fled the United States after pleading guilty to unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor
Wow.
back in 1977.
Jeez.
So, he is a convicted criminal, but he's also, he's continued to have this successful filmmaking career,
Right.
which has fueled this this ongoing debate about whether he should face further consequences,
Yeah, it seems like he's living proof that you can be, condemned and celebrated
Totally.
at the same time.
Exactly.
But speaking of controversial figures in the entertainment industry, let's talk about Wade Robson.
Okay.
His inclusion on this list really highlights how public opinion can be swayed by personal beliefs and loyalties,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to, these iconic figures like Michael Jackson.
Absolutely. I mean, Robson's story, right? First defending Jackson against these abuse allegations and then later claiming to be a victim himself. It's just ignited this fierce debate.
Right.
Jackson's supporters see Robson as like a liar seeking money, while others completely believe his story. It raises these really tough questions about delayed disclosure in abuse cases
Uh-huh.
and how to determine like truth from fabrication, especially in these really high-profile cases.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to separate the accusations from the larger, cultural narrative surrounding Michael Jackson.
Totally.
And speaking of cultural narratives, let's move from the world of music to the world of online influencers, starting with Cardi B.
Right.
And, oh my gosh, the comments about her are pretty intense.
Oh,
Accusations of, telling people to harm themselves, even, drugging and robbing men.
wow.
It's a lot. It's clear that her online behavior and public image are definitely playing a big role in her inclusion on this list.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, while, her comments could be seen as inflammatory or harmful, do they actually rise to the level of criminal offenses?
Right.
It's a whole other story.
So this brings up another layer to the whole, like, cancel culture conversation, right?
Yeah.
Does every offensive or controversial statement online warrant legal action?
Hmm.
And, like, how do we determine where that line is drawn?
That's the million-dollar question, right? I mean, it's a really complex legal area, and the answer isn't always clear-cut.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating to see how the public kind of grapples with these gray areas, especially when it comes to figures who have a large platform and a lot of influence.
And speaking of large platforms and influence, next on this list is someone who knows a thing or two about that.
Okay.
Mark Zuckerberg.
Ah, yes.
With all the controversy surrounding Facebook and its impact on, everything.
Seriously, everything.
From elections to mental health.
It's a lot.
It's not surprising to see him included here.
Yeah. Zuckerberg's presence on the list really reflects, I think, this growing concern about the power and responsibility of these tech giants.
Mm-hmm.
There's this sense that, like, these companies have this massive influence on our lives,
Yeah.
yet they operate with very little accountability.
Right.
The comments against him really focus on things like data privacy, the spread of misinformation, and his perceived, like, lack of action to actually address these problems.
It's interesting how this list jumps from individual acts, like assault or fraud, to these broader society issues like the influence of social media and the power of these tech companies.
That's a good point.
But as we dive deeper into this list, we're going to continue to see how those individual actions often reflect these larger cultural anxieties and debates.
I'm ready for it. It's a fascinating time, to be, like, following these conversations. It seems like the public is demanding more accountability from those in power,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's, politics, entertainment, tech.
For sure. And speaking of demanding accountability, next on the list is someone whose case really highlights how quickly public opinion can shift.
Oh, okay.
Jussie Smollett.
Jussie Smollett, yes, the alleged hate crime that, well, wasn't. Yeah, this case, I think, perfectly illustrates how social media can really fuel both sides of a story
Uh-huh.
and create this, like, whirlwind of support and then outrage as new information comes out.
Right.
Initially, he got this, like, outpouring of sympathy and support for, supposedly being the victim of this horrible hate crime.
Yeah.
But then, as evidence pointed to a potential hoax, the public just, like, turned on him completely,
Wow.
demanding accountability for what they saw as, a manipulation of these really important social justice issues.
It's almost like people felt betrayed by the whole situation.
Totally.
And then, of course, we have O.J. Simpson,
Okay.
a name synonymous with one of the most, polarizing trials in American history.
Oh, absolutely.
Even years later, one of the comments, it just says, flat out, he should be put back in jail.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, Simpson's case is like a textbook example of how celebrity status can really intersect with legal proceedings
Right.
and often kind of blur the lines between guilt and innocence in the eyes of the public, right?
Yeah.
So despite being acquitted of the murder charges back in 95, public opinion, it's remained so divided.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people still believe he was guilty. And then his later conviction for armed robbery and kidnapping
Right.
just, like, added fuel to that fire.
It's like there's this lingering sense that he hasn't truly faced consequences for his actions,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of, like, what the legal outcomes were.
Yeah.
But shifting gears a bit, let's talk about another YouTuber on this list, Daddy05.
Okay.
This case, it raises some really disturbing questions about the ethics of online content creation
Yeah.
and the potential for exploitation, especially, when kids are involved.
Absolutely. So Daddy05 was a YouTube channel that, they gained notoriety for their, quote, prank videos
Okay.
involving their children.
Right.
And the content was, a lot of people found it really disturbing and emotionally abusive, and the public outrage ultimately led to investigations and legal intervention, thankfully.
It's a stark reminder that what might seem like, harmless entertainment to some
Yeah.
can actually cross the line into really harmful behavior,
Absolutely.
particularly when it involves, children.
For sure.
And this line between entertainment and exploitation. It's also relevant to the next person on our list, 6ix99.
Okay.
So this rapper, well known for his legal troubles and controversial persona, he was released from prison early during the COVID-19 pandemic
Right.
because of health concerns.
Yeah, I remember that.
And this really sparked a lot of debate,
Mhm.
Some argued that it was like preferential treatment for celebrities, while others, highlighted the unique circumstances of the pandemic and its impact on the justice system.
Yeah, it's true. It did add like a whole other layer of complexity to these issues of justice and accountability.
Totally. And speaking of complex figures, next up is Prince Andrew and
Yeah.
his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
And subsequent accusations of sexual misconduct have, really made him a target of public scrutiny and criticism.
Yeah, his case, I think, highlights how even members of like these really powerful institutions, like the British royal family, they're not immune to this,
Right.
to the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, his association with Epstein and the allegations against him have just, I mean, they've severely damaged his reputation.
For sure.
And it's raised questions about like the accountability of those in positions of power.
Yeah, it seems that in today's world, no one is above scrutiny.
True.
And speaking of scrutiny, let's move on to Alex Jones.
Alex Jones, okay.
A figure who, thrives on controversy.
Oh, yeah, he does.
Alex Jones, I think, is a fascinating case study in the power and the danger of misinformation.
Totally.
So his platform, built on, spreading these conspiracy theories,
Mm-hmm.
it's attracted a huge following, but it's also, drawn significant criticism
Yeah.
for promoting, harmful and false narratives, particularly surrounding things like, the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting.
Right, right.
And his inclusion on this list really raises questions about the limits of free speech
Uh-huh.
and the responsibility individuals have for the information they, put out there, especially when it can have these real-world consequences.
It's true. Like, actions have consequences.
Exactly.
Even online.
But moving from the realm of conspiracy theories to the world of politics, we have Ben Shapiro,
Ben Shapiro.
a conservative political commentator, known for his, sharp rhetoric and polarizing views.
Yeah, I mean, Shapiro's presence on this list, I think, reflects like the deep political divisions within the United States and how those play out, very intensely online.
Yeah.
His inclusion likely stems from, those who just strongly disagree with his political stances and his worldview.
Right.
It highlights how, these lists can be really influenced by political biases and personal beliefs.
It's a reminder that these lists aren't like these objective measures of criminality, but rather reflections of public sentiment, which can be so deeply influenced by, political affiliations and ideologies.
All the way.
And speaking of figures whose actions have sparked intense debate and divided public opinion, next up is Bill Cosby.
Okay, so Cosby's case was a turning point, I think, in the #MeToo movement. Like, his conviction for sexual assault after years of accusations and denials, I mean, it sent this really powerful message that even beloved and influential figures could be held accountable for their actions,
It's true.
It was a huge moment for survivors of sexual abuse and I think a sign of a changing cultural landscape.
Yeah, his case, along with Harvey Weinstein's, who we'll get to a little bit later,
Right.
really helped to reshape the whole conversation
Yeah.
about sexual misconduct and power dynamics in Hollywood and beyond.
Absolutely.
But speaking of complex cases involving allegations of abuse, let's talk about Amber Heard.
Okay.
Her highly publicized, legal battle with Johnny Depp
Oh, yeah.
over claims of domestic abuse.
All
I mean,
right.
it captivated the public.
Totally.
And it ignited this fierce debate about the complexities of these kinds of cases.
Yeah, it became a media spectacle.
Huge.
With, both Heard and Depp accusing each other of abuse.
Right.
And it led to, like, passionate supporters on both sides.
This case really underscores how difficult it can be to determine, what's true and what's not in these situations, especially when there are these conflicting accounts
Yeah.
and just these strong emotions involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also highlights how social media can just, like, amplify these narratives.
For sure.
And shape public perception, often with little regard for, nuance or due process.
Exactly. It becomes almost impossible to separate the individuals from the narrative surrounding them.
Totally.
And public opinion often, forms before all the facts are even known.
It's true.
Which leads us to another figure whose online persona has played a significant role in shaping public perception.
Okay.
Jake Paul.
Jake Paul. All right. So this YouTuber and boxer, he's faced numerous accusations of violence against women.
Yeah.
And a lot of the comments, they're actually comparing him to Chris Brown.
Oh, wow.
And even arguing that he's, quote, much worse.
It's interesting how those comparisons kind of emerge, right? Is it just the nature of the accusations? Or is there something about Jake Paul's, personality and online presence
Right.
that fuels like this stronger negative reaction?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It seems likely that, both the accusations themselves and his public persona are kind of contributing to the backlash.
Hmm.
He's often perceived as, arrogant, provocative, which
Yeah,
may amplify, that negative sentiment toward him.
right.
It speaks to the power of image and how it can really influence, public judgment.
It's a reminder that these aren't just names on a list.
Mhm.
There are real people with complex lives and public images that shape how we perceive them, often for better and worse.
Absolutely.
And speaking of figures who have faced a dramatic fall from grace, next on the list is Harvey Weinstein.
I mean, Weinstein's case, it was truly a watershed moment, wasn't it? It wasn't just about like one man's actions. It exposed this systemic problem of abuse and
Right.
silencing in Hollywood.
Uh-huh.
And his conviction, I mean, on multiple charges of sexual assault,
Yeah.
I mean, it emboldened countless other survivors to come
Yeah.
forward and share their stories. I mean, it really led to like this global reckoning with how pervasive sexual misconduct is in these positions of power.
It really feels like his case, alongside Cosby's, really ushered in this new era of accountability. You
I
know,
think so too.
it's a reminder that even the most powerful figures can be brought down when survivors are empowered to speak their truth.
Absolutely.
But let's wrap up our deep dive with a figure whose alleged offenses are of a very different nature.
Okay.
Jaclyn Hill,
Jaclyn Hill, all right.
a beauty influencer who landed on this list because of, well, contaminated lipsticks.
Oh, yeah, I remember this one. So Hill's case is interesting, right? Because it shifts the focus from like, personal misconduct to corporate responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
The accusations against her involve allegations that her makeup products were contaminated, which led to, customer complaints, health concerns,
Right.
and it raises questions about, the accountability of these influencers and brands for the quality and safety of what they're endorsing and selling.
It's a reminder that public scrutiny, I mean, it extends beyond like just individual actions
Right.
to encompass like the products and the businesses associated with these figures.
Totally.
This whole list with its, I mean, diverse range of accusations and controversies, it's really, it's given us a lot to think about.
It has.
It's fascinating to see how like public opinion shapes perceptions of guilt and innocence,
Mm-hmm.
often, going beyond like the legal definitions of crime.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a journey, hasn't it?
It has.
Like through this complex landscape of celebrity and crime and public judgment.
For sure.
And we've seen, how social media amplifies both the accusations and the defenses.
Right.
How personal beliefs and loyalties really color our perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And how the lines between like legal accountability and public condemnation, they can get really blurred.
It's clear that public opinion has this powerful influence.
Yeah.
I mean, driving boycott that's shaping careers, even demanding legal action in some cases.
That's true.
But it also raises those important questions about, due process, fairness,
Right.
and the potential for mob mentality in this digital age that we live in.
And it makes you wonder, right? Like, are online lists like these, are they actually a genuine reflection of public sentiment?
Right?
Or are they just like a breathing ground for outrage and negativity?
Mm-hmm.
It's a question worth pondering.
It is. It definitely is. And for all of you listening out there, we want to hear from you.
Yeah, let us know.
What surprised you the most about this list? Do you think everyone on this list deserves to be behind bars? Head over to our social media, share your thoughts. Let's keep this conversation going.